This is Gemara Basra, Daf Kof Ayin Gimel, the final few days of this long and lengthy Masechta B'siyata D'Shemaya. The Koyach HaTaira should be an incredible Zchus Rafua Shalema for Tinok ben Miriam Ahuva B'Seich Sha'ar Chayle Yisrael. We're holding on the very top of Kof Ayin Gimel and Aleph. We just concluded that according to Abaye, there's going to be a chilek between l'nefila dechad and l'nefila derabim, whether one person potentially could have dropped the shtar, or whether there are multiple people, and this is within the discussion of trying to figure out how Yosef ben Shimon could write a document, could collect a document, different methodologies, whether it means writing 3 generations like we saw, whether it means putting in a siman, etc. So says the Gemara that we're always concerned according to everyone, as the top Rashbam really keys us in. L'kuli alma parich. We're now asking a kasha according to everyone, because everyone holds the nefila dechat. Everyone is agreed that we're not worried about lenefila dechat. We're not worried that one person is going to drop something and find it by someone else. So based on that premise, based on the fact that lenefila dechat lo yichayshinon, says the Gemara, the top line of Kovayin Gimel Amenahalev Eladetanya, that which we learned in Abraisa. Kishem, just like Shein Mitziin Shtar Chayv Zelzeh, just like two Yosef and Shimon's, two people with the exact same names, cannot take a shtar one on the other to collect. So too, they cannot collect on other people. Says the Gemara. For 1 second, we just said we're not worried that if you dechad, we're not worried that Yosef and Shimon is going to drop the document, and someone else is going to pick it up. So the kasha is, what exactly is the machlekes between the Mishnah and the Brisa? The Brisa says that you cannot force someone to pay back. The Mishnah says that we are concerned. So you would think that the machlekes is, are we worried l'nefila dechad? Are we worried that one person drops it? But now that we just finished concluding that according to everyone, even according to Abaye, l'nefila dechad lo yichayshinon. So now we have machlekes Mishnah and Brisa. And how do we explain it? Says the Gemara 3 lines down, you know what the machlekes is? A different machlekes are literally letters, are a document. Can you be kaina with mere misira by mere handing it over? Tana di don savar. Our Mishnah holds that indeed that the letters is a kinyan b'misira. And therefore, that when you have a shtar, you could collect with it. Why? Because the fact that you have the shtar is its kinyan itself. Whereas Vitana Brasavar, this price that we just quoted holds ein ois niknis b'misira. Therefore, the fact that you're holding the document is not going to be enough to allow you to collect pshat number 1. Pshat number 2, niknis b'misira. What's the machlekes? Mitzarech lavi raya kamiflagi. The machlekes between the Mishnah and the Brisa is: does one need to bring a raya when holding a shtar that it is indeed yours? Tanadi dan savar, Mishnah holds eitzarech lavi raya, and therefore the mere holding of the shtar allows you to collect. V'tana brasavar sarech lavi raya. You do need to bring a raya, and therefore, according to our Tana, ein tzarich lavi raya, and therefore, if Yosef ben Shimon has a shtar, even though there's another Yosef ben Shimon in the city, Yosef ben Shimon can collect with it. Why? Because ein tzarich lavi raya. Tana brother Brisa holds tzarich lavi raya, and therefore you cannot collect with the shtar. Ditmar. Now the Gemara proves that this concept is a machlekes with regard to whether letters are kind of a mesira. Abaye Amar Sarach Lavi Raya, V'Rava Amar Einay Sarach Lavi Raya. So the Gemara concludes that this is indeed an old machlaikas, and therefore it's mistaver, it makes sense to say that this such is the machlaikas in our Mishnah and the Brisa. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Continues the Gemara. Now that we quoted this machlaikas Abaye and Rav, whether oisi nikis b'mesira or not, Amar Abaye mina mina lo. Where do I know my shita that oisi indeed nikis b'mesira? The time we learned in a Brisa echem and achem sheshtar chayv yoytzi mitachas yadai. If one of the brothers, we have brothers that inherited a Yerusha, and one of them has a shtar chayv. He has a shtar saying that a field that something is his. What's the halacha? Says the Brisa. Alav lavirayam. He has to bring a proof that it is indeed his. The shtar is his. So says Abaye, what do we see from here? My love is it not obvious who adin lachrini that the same thing would apply to others. That this case is the brothers bringing a raya against his other brothers, that the shtar is his. It says Abaye, seemingly this is not a din that has anything to do with the fact that it's Yerusha. It's a global din, says Abaye, that any time you're holding a shtar, is that enough? Do you have to bring a raya? Says Abaye, no. It says Abaye, excuse me, it's not enough. Yes, you have to bring a raya like we see over here. And how does Rava respond? Rava Amar Shaini Achen, brothers are different. Tishamtu mei hadadi. Because brothers would grab things one from another. And therefore says Rava, yeah, Abaye, there is this brisa about brothers bringing a raya with regard to the shtar that they're holding. But says Rava, that's tafka by brothers who at times will grab one from another. But in a regular case of someone holding a shtar, says Rava, you would not have to bring a raya. Ikadi Amri, another way of learning this discussion between Abaye and Rava. Oh my Rava, where do I know this from? Meaning now the tables are flipped. Rava's bringing a raya. And over here says Rava, brothers grab from each other. So Rava says this is mamish a raya to me, that only brothers. No, it's achin, it's brothers, and everyone. So why did the Brisa say the case about brothers? To teach us a chiddush. I mean, I would have thought given the shamdim adadi. Ema mizdar zehiri, maybe mamish psychologically fakert. Because they grab, maybe that's more of a reason that one would certainly be careful with the shtar, and therefore if he has a shtar, Kamash Milan, that even the brother, says Abaye, that's the chiddush over here, has to bring a raya. So continues the Gemara, going back to where we started today. That was a slight segue into the machlekes Abaye and Rava, whether Allah of raya or not. Continues the Gemara that we started today with the machlekes to the Brisa of the Mishnah. Whenever we have two Yosef ben Shimon's, two people with identical names in one city, what the halacha is if they could collect from someone else. Continues the Gemara of Elahad Tani on the first white line with a third shita. Says the Brisa, just like they cannot collect from anyone else, just like they could, collect from someone else. This Brisa holds that Yosef and Shimon could collect from others with a shtar, and even from each other. But Maiko Mifli. So what? According, now that we have three different shitais, how we can explain the machlekes between this Tana and our Mishnah? Because the shtar live al bishin malvi Maiko Mifli. Whether you write a shtar for the bar or if the malva is not there. Tana di dan savar Mishnah holds because the shtar live al bishin malva imai. And therefore, why Zimnin does gabe safra? A loive wants to borrow money. He's going to go to a sefer to write up a shtar. V'sadi v'amlu katzali shtar adivin lemezav mi Yosef and Shimon. Write me a shtar. I want to borrow from Yosef and Shimon Chavri. After he signs and writes it, after he writes and signs it, Nikita lay, V'amar lay, Havli meya, Tiyazavta minai. And then what happens after he writes it, after he borrows it? Then he goes to the other Yosef ben Shimon and says, give me 100 that you borrowed from me. And this document seemingly is a raya. So how do we prevent this? Because again, if we have two people with the same name, if one's borrowing from Yosef ben Shimon, that means the other one is getting from Yosef ben Shimon. Says the Gemara, so Tana Baras Havari goes to Shalai about Shima Ve'imai. The other Tana says no. In order to safeguard that you'll never have a scenario that Yosef and Shimon could create such a story, you will never write a document to the Leiva without a Malva, and that's going to be the Machlaikas between our Mishnah and the Brisa. And with that, we now continue 8 lines down, the white lines, the 2 dots. Nimsa lecha ben shtaraisav shtar Yosef ben Shimon parua shtarais shneim paruin. Said the Mishnah, if someone finds a document saying that the shtar Yosef ben Shimon is paid, and again, there's 2 Yosef ben Shimons, we assume the shtar of both of them is paid. So the simple way that we understand this case is that I was a malva. I lent money to 2 different people with the same name. I now have a shtar that shows that it's paid. I don't know which one is paid, so I can't collect either of them. Says the Gemara, based on the way that we just explained this case, time the name said sounds like only because the document was found saying that it was paid. If you didn't find such a document, it would sound like then you could, yes, collect. But ask the Gemara, V'hanan. But we learned, we learned in our Mishnah that no one can collect from these Yosef and Shimon. So ask the Gemara, it sounds like, what's the diak? Sounds like because they found the shtar that was parua, that's when you can collect. But if not, you would yes collect. Says the Gemara, that's at odds with our Mishnah. As we've spoken about, the Eitzah is that you write a 3rd generation. Says the Gemara, 1 second. V'nechsi. So let us see. Tavra b'shma deman dekasav. The receipt whose name is written. If we have 3 generations, we should be able to trace it back. Amar Rav Haisha b'mishlasha b'shtar b'mishlashin b'shayver. You found the shayver. So in the shayver, they're not of the 3rd generation. So that's why you have this unclear entity that you don't know which one was paid. But the shtar was Abaye Amar, Hachik Amar. Nimsa Leiva ben Shtaraisav, Shtar Yosef ben Shimon. Says Abaye, I'll tell you what the teretz is. That the borrower found the shtar of Yosef ben Shimon, Alai Parua, Shtar Shneim Parua. So Abaye explains the case a little bit different. That the borrower had a document saying the shtar of Yosef ben Shimon, Alai Parua, the one against me is paid. And he borrowed money from 2 different people, Yosef and Shimon. Then he does not have to pay for either of them. We assume shtar shel shneim paruin. We conclude part A of today's share. Ketzid Yaseh Yishal Shalu, right 3 generations. Sanam Vayishneim Kohanim Yechtavu Daireis. If the Kohanim, which was the other way of differentiating, then what? Then they should write Daireis. Then they should write even another generation until we find a difference to differentiate between who is the precise Yosef and Shimon that we are referring to. Continues with the Mishnah on the bottom of Kuf Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph, another halacha, very similar to the last halacha we've been discussing. Someone tells his son, one of the shtarais amongst all my shtarais are paid. Again, we just spoke about a case that you found such a document. Now we have someone telling his son such. And I do not know which one. What's that halacha? Shtarais kulim paruin. We have to assume they're all paid. Nimsa le'echad shem shneim. If we find amongst all, if nimsa le'echad sham shnayim, if 2 documents from a single borrower are found, gadol parua v'kataneinu parua. So we have 2 documents, and the father said we know one is paid. So then, what do we say? We say that the gadol is paid because you can always only collect the least amount, and the katan is not. Says the Gemara, the smaller halva is not. Amar Rava, shtar lecha biyadi parua. If someone says the document of yours that is in my hand is paid, and he has 2 documents, so again, I got the parua, v'kataneinu parua. Chayv lecha biyadi parua, shtar is kulam paruin, because the word chayv includes everything. Amrle Ravina leRava lemiata sadim mechur lecha sadim gedei lemechur lecha. Sadai Shieshli, it's feel that I have a churus l'cha. Kol Sadai Mechurim l'cha loy. Are we going to say that if you just say the word, the part of the stam word, Sadeh, then we have to assume that they're all sold just like the word. If he says chayiv, says Gemara, no. Asam yad balashtar al tachtoin over there. The balashtar is al tachtoin. Therefore, when you say chayiv, then we have to assume they're all paid, but not in the case of a mecher. We continue with another Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Malvas Chavera Yedei Arev. Continue with halachas of different halvayos, different stories. Now we move on to a new case that someone lends money with an arev with a guarantor. Says the Mishnah, Lo yipare min arev. You do not collect from the arev as we turn over to Kaf Ayin Gimel Amid Beis. Lo yipare min arev. Then the stam is you do not collect from the arev. So we'll see obviously what's the reason that you're writing out the arev. Obviously, there's more details over here. But if he writes, I'm making this loan that I'll be able to collect from anyone, Yiparim in an arev, then indeed you would be able to collect from the arev. So of course we have to get a deeper understanding what exactly are these first cases in the Mishnah. Continues the Mishnah, Rashbag Omer says Rav Shimon Gamliel, if the leiva has nechasim, his own properties come first. Rav Shimon Gamliel would say, if someone is a guarantor for a woman in her ksuba, and then the husband is divorcing her now, the husband has to make a neder hana that she cannot get benefit from him. Because the person, the husband, might make a kinunya with the guarantor's properties and the forcing the arev to pay, and then he's going to go and remarry his wife. So in order to ensure that the husband doesn't pull shtick, we make him make a neder hana from this person. And we'll see more what exactly that means. So it starts the Gemara with the first case of the Mishnah, the case of the arev. Says the Gemara, my time, I don't understand. You wrote a shtar with an arev. I lent you money and I needed a third-party guarantee. Said the Mishnah, you don't collect from the arev. The Gemara doesn't say, well, why not? Isn't that the whole purpose of the arev? So says the Gemara, Rabba v'Rav Yosef Ta'amri Tarvayu, Gavra ashlimte elei, Gavra ashlimi l'cha. Says Rabba v'Rav Yosef, because the arev could say, Gavra ashlimte li, you handed over a man, the borrower, to me. Gavra ashlimi l'cha, and I handed over the man back to you. Meaning, if the loiva is still around, says the arev, I don't have to pay. I'm here to stand in if there's no one to collect from. But there's someone to collect from, the loiva. So go and collect from him. Says the Gemara, Maskal Rav Nachman, Hai Dina de Parsai. Says Rav Nachman, this is the law of the Persians. Says Gemara, 1 second. No, Adrabah. Basra Areva, so the Persians do indeed go with the Arva, with the guarantor. Ella, no, this is the Kasha. Beitina de Parsai to every time limit to layu. This is like the bezdin of the Persians. You're not giving a reasoning, meaning you're not explaining what's going on over here. Why lemaisa? If the loiva, you wrote it with an arev, why is the arev able to say, oh, the loiva's here, I'm not doing anything? Ela Rav Nachman, I'll explain to you what the Mishnah means. My leyaparim in arev, lo yitbe arev tchila. Now that makes a lot of sense. That when the Mishnah said you don't collect from the arev, it didn't mean never. It meant you don't go to the arev first. That makes a lot of sense. And now we learned in a brayso. But if he said, and now we understand the progression of the Mishnah, as the brayso explains, that if he said on condition that I can pay back from anyone I want, then then he could indeed collect from the arev first. A beautiful pshat in the Mishnah. Where do we know what is the makar that an arev is mishubad? An arev can obligate himself. Says the pasuk, a pasuk by Yaakov and Binyamin coming up in a few weeks. Anoichi arvena miyodai tivakshenu. I will guarantee him from my hand you can demand. Says the pasuk that we see that Yudah is guaranteeing himself. We see that Yaakov accepts it. It must be that a guarantee works. Says Mar 1 second, Maslar Rav Chisda, Kabbalanosi. As Rav Chisda, where Yehuda wasn't a regular guarantee. Because the Pasuk said, Tana Asai, Al Yadi Vani Ashivena. Give him to my care and I'll return him. So what do we see? This is more of a Kabbalan. This is not a regular. It's not a regular arif. A kablan is just a higher level of achrayis. But this is not a classical arif. They'll have to pay back for everything. Ella says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yitzchak Me'alcha, a new source, Lakach Big Dai Ki Arif Zar, Uba'an Nachriya Chavlei, says the Pasuk, a Pasuk in Mishlei, says the pasuk, "Lekach big dai ki arev zar." Take the guarantor's garment because he became a guarantor, a stranger of a guarantor. An account of an achriya, of someone who's not an alien, someone who's not related, take a security. Va'omer, and the psukim continue. Or earlier, the pasuk says, "Bini im avarta l'riyecha takata lizar kapecha." My son, if you become a guarantor for a friend, if you stuck out your palm for a stranger, noikashta be'imrei picha, nikalti be'imrei picha. You become snared by the words of your mouth. Asei zois efa b'ni v'inatzel. Do this now and deliver yourself, my son. Ki basa be'kafreyecha, because you have come in the palm, in the hand of your neighbor. Be'kafreyecha leich. Go and treat your neighbor as a ruler. So these psukim in Mishlei, says the Gemara, come to teach us that one is able to give himself over as the Ariv. The Gemara explains, what do we see from the end of the pasuk? If you have money, hater loy pisas yad, open up the palm of your hand and go and pay him the money that you guaranteed. And if you're not going to do that, then get a lot of friends and ask forgiveness because you guaranteed a loan that you're not able to pay. A makar for the concept of arif. And we wrap up today's shiur with a drop of a deeper understanding. Amar Abaye, arif de mishtabed, machlekes Rav Yudah v'Rav Yosi. Whether an arif is actually obligated is a machlekes. So Rav Yosi, machlekes Rav Yudah v'Rav Yosi. Rav Yosi damras machlek kanya. Oh, this brings us back to machlekes we had a few days ago. If you hold that when you make an alliance, it's a kunyan. Ariv mishtabed. Ariv is similarly. Rav Yudah damras machlek kanya. Ariv lo mishtabed. Amar lei. Rav Ashi la meimar. 1 second. We know a smachta is not kanya, as we've concluded in the previous sugya, and yet varim mishtabe. So how can the two be totally on each other? Elam Rav Ashi b'huano to come heminlei kamaru mishabe nafshei. Says Rav Ashi, we have a new svara. Even though a smachta loy kanya, but from the fact that he gets a hana, that he's considered to be chashiv. On that, the Arev is Mishabin himself. So even though maybe in the general sense, a Smachta won't be Kaineh, but of course an Arev will, yes, obligate himself. We'll pick it up from here, B'siyata Dishmaya.